Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Sports Vibe podcast, brought to you by Vibe 107.6 with me, Noah Abrahams, joined by Ryan Thrussell and Chris Milligan. Well, what a week it's been for Watford. Nigel Pearson's departure, the fans are turning, and the Hornets are back in the relegation zone. Losses to West Ham and Manchester City mean that the Championship is all of a sudden a very real possibility. With no permanent manager and a tirade of negativity, what's gone wrong and what needs to change? Ryan, Chris and I will look forward to the last game of the season against Arsenal and back at a week to forget. All on the latest episode of the Sports Vibe podcast. Plus, we discuss the National League playoffs as Borehamwood and Barnet come within touching distance of the Football League. All of that and more coming up. Okay, so we're back with the latest episode of the Sports Vibe podcast after Watford lost 4-0 to Manchester City. The mood isn't the best. I've seen it better in the Sports Vibe studio. We're joined today by Chris Milligan. Hi Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, all things considering, pretty well, obviously, bar the result. I think can't complain too much, but yeah, we're going to talk about the not so good side of football, aren't we, today?
The not so good side, absolutely. Ryan joins us. Hi Ryan, how are you?
Hello Noah, I am all good considering sun's out, so we'll take that as a positive.
There's a positive.
Yeah. But obviously feeling a little bit like a deflated balloon after last night's result against Man City, although it was Man City, but you know, it's a very tough week to look forward to now.
Lee, are you like a deflated balloon? How are you?
Yeah, absolutely at the minute. Yeah, I'm okay. But obviously very disappointed, just not necessarily about that result. Of course, disappointed with the result, but you know, that was, like Ryan just said, Man City. Just disappointed that we find ourselves in the position we're in, where a few weeks ago it didn't look like that, to be honest.
So Watford back in the relegation zone. They're staring relegation in the face. Are we angry, Ryan?
I would say, I don't know. I don't think I'm angry because I'm always going to support Watford no matter what. But it's just disappointing, I think. I sound like a school teacher, but since Watford have come back from the summer break, the coronavirus break, it just feels like there's just something that's not quite right with the club. And obviously we've seen that over the last week and the West Ham game, which was just terrible. And actually in terms of the last 8 games that we played since we've come back, the club have just been so... it just feels like there's not been any desire there to stay up. I remember, Noah, earlier on when we started the podcast, you mentioned the Sunderland situation when Sunderland had no desire in their club to stay up. It sort of feels a bit like that way with Watford. I mean, if I was watching the matches and it wasn't, you know, the players were working very hard and they were only just losing, but it just feels like every single game I've watched since the comeback, even Newcastle, Norwich to some respects, it just feels like it's not been the Watford team that was there under Pearson before the coronavirus lockdown.
Speaking to sort of contacts that I know that have got kind of reasonably close connections with the team, you know, I think the problem of attitude of players and stuff has been a problem for a little while. That's something that isn't new. But clearly, this looks like it's something that doesn't just stem from in the dressing room. This has got to be something that comes from higher up as well. You see it with Sunderland, for example. I mean, that is, obviously one of the worst scenarios. They're in such dire straits and still are to an extent. But that all came from the fact you had an owner that hadn't got any interest in the club, wasn't willing to invest because he invested money and then decided that wasn't going to be the way forward. He thought he could get up from the Championship with a budget of 0, and that didn't work, and they're in League One. I don't think Watford quite in that scenario, but you know, not to say that the positives aren't interested, far from it, but clearly there's something not quite right that isn't ticking in the boardroom, and I don't know what it is. Well,
Ryan mentioned the desire across the last 8 games. Over the last 7 days, it's been topsy-turvy at Watford Football Club. The departure of Nigel Pearson. Lee, it's been a really, really odd situation. From the Pozzos, as Chris just mentioned, to the management, what has gone wrong at Watford so that we're talking about all of these problems right now?
First and foremost, I think sometimes we do need to remember where we was before
absolutely.
Gino and the Pozzos family took over, where we was as a club, where the ground was. We have to remember that, and also Scott's been fantastic for the club, in my opinion, and what they've done and where we are. So we have to remember where we are now, and the fact we're talking about, albeit not where we want to be, relegation from the Premier League, but where we was as a club to actually where we are now, and 5 seasons in the top flight. So first and foremost, I think we do need to get a grasp of that. And then from where we are at the moment, since we've come back, my feeling since we've come back from what I've seen on the pitch is that the players just, and we know how tight the ground is, and this is not me making an excuse, or maybe some people would say I am, but how tight the ground is and how important the fans are for Watford in that stadium and when it's going. We've heard lots of different Watford players, but also away players and people that are not associated to the club saying about how the ground is now and that it makes a difference as an away team. And I think that has had a massive bearing on the performances that maybe have not been quite where we would want them to be.
Yeah, I'm picking up on the point that you just said there about sort of like the Watford fans playing like the 12th man. Yeah, I think it is important. I was saying this to my dad earlier this year. For a club like Watford, the fans is, it's just a huge support. You get that great atmosphere. A club like, Manchester City that aren't going to obviously be in the same situation, but don't get that same support, it's not going to affect them so much. But you've lost also this idea of the home advantage. We saw that when the Bundesliga came back and home teams were losing games, they didn't have the backing of the fans in the stadium, and you're seeing a lot more of away teams winning games. I think you're probably right in order to say that has got to definitely be a factor in the results that we're seeing, and particularly that one against Manchester City last night. If the fans maybe had been on side, maybe it might have been a slightly different story. Who knows?
The fans' voice is strong. That means that even when not in the stadium, opinions will be formed, Ryan. Have they got a right to be confused at the moment? Have they got a right to be disappointed at what they're seeing on the football pitch? Or like Lee says, do they have to be grateful that actually it's not over till the fat lady sings? We're still in this. We're not relegated yet. And there are plenty of positives in terms of look where we are. Look at the stadium. Look at the training facilities. Let's try and get out of this by beating Arsenal, and let's hope Villa lose to West Ham.
Yeah, well, we're not down yet. That's the biggest positive in this whole situation. And I keep thinking to myself, surely at some point we're going to see a performance that's a good display, and that will change things. And let's hope they've left that to the last minute against Arsenal. But I sort of agree with Lee's point. Before the Pozzos were at the club, it was a totally different club. I remember going to matches where all the lights were turned off at the end of it, as soon as it was on the final whistle, because they literally couldn't afford to pay the bills pretty much. So, I remember it back like that, and I still went every single game, and obviously got better under Pozzos. So the fact we're in the Premier League now is amazing, really. It's obviously a very difficult situation because, as Watford fans, we haven't really found ourselves in this position before, where we've had so many managers come in, and well, you could argue over 7 years we have, but only in recent times. I think the problem now is fans are starting to question the authority at the top of the club and wonder what's going on, and the fact of why was Pearson sacked with 2 games to go. We're probably not going to know, and that's probably a good reason for that, but one that we can't discuss. But it's obviously a worry now, and it's come down to a real crucial last game of the season, and we've got to rely on results to go away.
Yeah, it's really, obviously have to recognise the work that the Pozzos done for Watford Football Club. Obviously I'm not a season ticket holder at Watford Football Club. It's my local team that I always like to go and see do well and try and follow every now and then. And I remember the days of going to Vicarage Road when Saracens used to play there, and in the stadium. And I remember kept on saying, I think Watford needed probably a new stadium. And I remember going for the first time when Watford were back in the Premier League and just being like, this is great. This is a Premier League ground. This is amazing. We've got a lot to thank them for. But that question then comes in: when can you start questioning them over what's happening at the moment? Is it fair to put them under criticism for what's happened? The facts are the facts. There's been, how many managers in one season now? Is it 3 managers this season? Four managers in one season. Surely that's not a healthy way to run a football club.
Well, football comes down to the players as well. Do players have to take some responsibility? Ben Foster, yes, they said that the confidence was at an all-time low. Do the players have to take some responsibility? Ryan?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's got to the stage now where the players are starting to let themselves down a little bit. But then you could argue that there's absolutely no stability at the club with 4 managers involved this season. You know, some of them might think, well, I don't want to play in a team like this. You know, I've signed a contract to be at a club that's given me stability, and I haven't had that. So it's obviously causing the problem. Yeah, I imagine, Lee, you probably agree.
Well, yeah, ultimately, whatever happens off the pitch, you know, it's down to the players on the pitch. You know, that's an obvious thing to say, I know, but also doesn't. This is just my opinion. No matter what a player is, who a player is, whatever club he's playing for, why you're signed and why you're contracted to that club, you're not just playing for yourself. You're playing for all those fans. You know, all the fans that support that club, and this goes right across, you know, across the Premier League, the EFL, and the whole world. You know, you're contracted to that club, and you're playing as much as for yourself, of course, but you're playing for the fans, and that's what sometimes maybe gets forgotten, especially as we are now, because there's no fans there. So it can be quite detached from the people that you're actually playing for, so to speak, which again, I suppose that makes it quite difficult when you're in a relegation battle, when you need that bit of confidence, you need that boost, you need them fans behind you singing and shouting. And since, you know, the 1881 have moved over into the corner and they're all together, and that it's very infectious. It's like a virus that then all of a sudden, yeah, if you know what I mean, it spreads around the ground, and you can hear that echo sometimes. It starts there and bang, it's gone. Without that's been a nightmare.
I think Lee makes a really good point about the fans and the town, what Watford means to the people of Watford. It's not just a football club. As the mayor said on the Drive show the other day, it gives such a boost to the whole community. If Watford were to go down, I mean, Hayden Mullins and Graham Stack have an extraordinary job on their hands, really thrown in the deep end, Chris. But as someone who knows the local community, it would be almost disastrous, and the morale would change.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would be a crying shame to have a Premier League team where you live is amazing. Of course it is, you know, and when you get to see some, you know, amazing teams like, you know, Liverpool this season and Manchester City, it's an honour to get them to come to Vicarage Road to play a football match. It really is. You know, would it be disastrous? I don't think it'd be great, obviously, that Watford get relegated for obvious reasons, financial being one of the main reasons. You know, you've got TV money and whatnot. But I always say this, and I've always said this, you know, for people that are listening that don't know, I'm an Arsenal fan. So, you know, that's always been my team. So it's going to be quite tricky in the final game of the season when Watford do play Arsenal. It's the first time, Lee, that I don't want Arsenal to win a football match, because I want to see Watford stay up, because we've got nothing to play for now. So there's no point us even trying for that.
Following week.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all that I'm focusing on now. So all I want is that Watford stay up in that final game. So I hope Watford do win for that reason.
It brings us nicely to the next game, the last game of the season against Arsenal at the Emirates. Arsenal going into an FA Cup final. Every player in that squad will want their place in the team for the final. Will that have an impact on the game? Will Arsenal want to bounce back from the Villa result?
I didn't watch the Villa game. Watching the highlights of it, it looked like that focus was elsewhere. I think their kind of main focus now is that FA Cup. That's the chance if they want to get into Europe. I couldn't care less if we got into Europa League or not, because it's a naff competition to be in, because it's a right pain in the backside. But for Watford, it would be a great thing to be in. Obviously, for a financial, you know, perspective. Obviously, but. You know, are they going to play first team squad against Watford? I think we're going to see players that will drop out, because, you know, it's coming up at the following weekend. It's going to be the final. We're going to want to win that. So I think the squad will change. We'll see a few of the younger lads come in, like Reece Nelsons and Joe Willocks and Maitland-Niles and whatever, will come in and probably play that game. And Aubameyang and Lacazette might drop out. And so I think Watford, in that sense, will have maybe that slight advantage that they're going to be playing maybe a weakened side. But then again, playing Arsenal, you can always get a result at the moment anyway. So I wouldn't put it past Watford. It's a difficult job. The players aren't quite clicking at the moment. You've got Hayden Mullins and Graham Stack there. You know, Graham, who's also a former Arsenal player as well. It's going to be a difficult game, I think, for Watford anyway. But all you've got to hope is that they come out all guns blazing and put in 100% effort and go. And if they do go down, you know, you can say that they went down fighting. They gave it a good go on that final game of the season.
It's what we have to expect. Let's get some score predictions, as we always do. Let's start with Ryan. So it's Arsenal versus Watford on Sunday, the the final game in this crazy Premier League season. What's the score going to be?
I got told off last week by a West Ham fan for my prediction of 3-2 to Watford. He said, you just discounted any West Ham ability in your prediction, so and it went horribly wrong, and all my predictions have all the way through. So, but look, if I'm going to stand here and say that Watford are going to be beaten, then that's not very good for the final game of the season when we need positivity, and all the players need to show that need to hear that the fans are still behind them no matter what. So I'm going to go for, as I said earlier, there's got to be one performance left in it from Watford this season, and maybe because so much is at stake in this match, and Graham Stack, as you brought in, might really rile the players up into really getting
certainly a
his
character
former club as a character, and because the players know what's expected of them here, and it's either win or lose, nothing else. A last game, a bit like a cup final. I'm going to say that I reckon Watford might just sneak through this one and win 2-1.
Interesting. Chris, your score prediction, please.
I think it's going to be 1-1. And West Ham to beat Villa final game and Watford stay up. That's what I think will happen.
The danger is the West Ham are pretty much safe, and that really is the danger, because I don't know how good the relationship is between David Moyes and Dean Smith. Whatever happens, that will be a really tough game.
Yeah, well, West Ham. Well, David Moyes has said he wants West Ham to get to 40 points at all costs. Has promised the fans that. So let's hope they don't turn up with their.
He's going to go for it, and they're playing well. So it's going to be a tough ask for Villa to go there and get 3 points, or even to play for a draw. I mean, they might just bed in and just sit for the draw. Who knows? But I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, I'm just hoping that West Ham turn up, they win, and then it's either 1-1 or Watford win 1-0. I'm honestly not bothered if Arsenal lose this game.
We've all got our fingers crossed. Lee, what's your score prediction for the game?
People saying that Arsenal, the team will be playing for their shirts. I think Arteta, he's got his side in his mind, so I don't think any performances against Watford will change his mind for who he's going to play in the cup final, barring any injuries, of course, for them. So I don't feel that the players are going out there playing for their spot in the FA Cup final, which goes in our favour. And I'm going for a Watford win. Graham Stack, Hayden Mullins do know their stuff. There's no doubt in that. So we'll be set up in the right way. And I really do feel that, the players will rise to the occasion. Some would say they haven't so far, but I really do feel they will. I'm going for a Watford 2-1 win. And of course us to stay up. Just one more thing I do want to say is that live in Watford all my life, and I've been going to Watford for so many years and in and around the town. I've never in recent years seen so many young kids in the parks, obviously not since lockdown, but prior to that, over the last few years, so many youngsters with Watford tops on. You see it everywhere, whereas it always used to be Tottenham's, Arsenal's, Man United's, Liverpool's, etc. Watford, the shirts on the youngsters are outnumbering them. So whatever happens this year, things like that are positive for the club and just bode well for future years as well.
Yeah, do you know what? And I think that's down to one of the things as, someone who is a season ticket holder at Arsenal, is that we always feel that, the fans are at a level and then the board and the club are so distant and far away that you lose that sort of fan experience. You lose that kind of closeness with the club. Whereas Watford, first and foremost, it's all about community and it's all about community spirit. And it's something that Watford does so well. It prides itself on being a family club, and that would never change. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think that's why young fans can go to the game and they really feel a part of it. So I think it would be devastating, obviously, Watford to go down and go to the Championship, but it wouldn't change. Your football club's your football club at the end of the day. You carry on supporting them, whatever happens, through thick and thin, and that will always be the case with Watford. And even if they are in the Championship, they're still going to get great support week in, week out, I'm sure.
And we can't forget that Watford were in the FA Cup final last year.
Absolutely, yeah. And what a great day that was to see so many Hornets fans walking down Wembley Way. It was, obviously not the result that we all wanted, but it was a brilliant day nonetheless.
Okay, so the future's a bit misty, but we're optimistic here at Vibe 107.6. We're also optimistic for Borehamwood. Now, Borehamwood and Barnet, two of our local sides, going up into the playoffs, into the semi-finals of the National League. Could they go to the Football League? Could they creep in? Who knows what's going to happen? Borehamwood play Harrogate Town on the weekend. Barnet go up to Notts County in what is a must-win game for both of our local sides. Borehamwood on Friday night, I was there covering it for Vibe, played Halifax Town. They beat the Shaman 2-1 at Meadow Park, and after the game I spoke to winning manager Luke Garrard. Okay, I'm with Luke Garrard for Vibe 107.6. A game of two halves. You've come out on top. How are you feeling?
Yeah, tempered. But my mood's tempered, of course. Listen, we could have easily lost the game of football today. We didn't apply ourselves in the first half. Sloppy, and I thought second half, Jamal Fifield was outstanding. I thought he was massive in terms of turning it in our favour. But yeah, we were fortunate enough to go and score 2 goals in a 45-minute period. We've got an unbelievable squad. We've got 2 days off now to regroup, ready for Monday. 4 big sessions, gearing up for a tough, extremely tough test going to Harrogate on Saturday.
Well, you've got that trip in the bag now. What did you say at half-time after what wasn't a great first-half performance? I'm sure you'd agree.
I've got to be honest, Vic Akers went in there very calm and spoke to the boys, as he does. Then Cameron Moyer threw a few expletives to the group. So I've got to be honest, you've seen the film, I can't do bad cop, can I? I've got to do bad cop, good cop. So I then turned it slightly on its head about being positive, about ensuring that we go and get in the game, because we were nowhere near it first half. We were deservedly 1-0 down, and they went and done that. I felt that we've got a lot of experience in that group, and there was a lot of talking, and I was just thankful that they done a lot of doing in the second half.
As Harrogate next, how do you prepare for that game? You've got, I think it's an 8-day period.
I've got, my wife's going to hate me now because I'm going to watch their last 8 to 10 games tomorrow and Sunday and come up with a game plan to try and deal with their threats and isolate and exploit their weaknesses, and that's something that I love doing. But for me, the first task was to get past Halifax. That's done. Park that. We now need to ensure that we go and give ourselves that 45-minute period across 90 minutes up at Harrogate, and I think we won't go far wrong.
And then it's Wembley.
Yes, potentially. Let's
potentially.
Hope.
Brilliant.
Let's hope.
Thanks, Luke. Good luck. Okay, so that was me speaking to Luke Garrard after the game, a manager who I think really deserves to be managing a side in the Football League. Chris, I know you follow Borehamwood.
Yeah.
Tell me all about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of followed Borehamwood ever since I started working at Vibe, and then also sort of other local media bits and bobs. So kind of keep a close eye on what they're doing. And it's been a successful project down at Meadow Park. Luke is one of the youngest managers, not only amongst sort of Football League managers, but in the conference as well. And he's done an incredible job. He's got like a really good head on him and a great attitude. Did a brilliant job getting him to the playoff final a couple of years ago. Then last season didn't quite click, and then this season it sort of worked again, which has been great to see. And also as an Arsenal fan, it's really lovely to hear him mention Vic Akers as well. He was a big part of the Arsenal dressing room, as he was the kit man for a number of years and also the women's coach, and did a fantastic job with that team as well. And it's great to hear him that he's apparently getting riled up with the players. But it's lovely. It's a lovely story. And also to have Barnet, because Barnet's a team that I used to go and watch quite a lot when I was younger as well. I used to go to Underhill with my dad. I used to love when I first arrived at Underhill, and we sat at the bottom of the pitch, and you can see there's a massive incline at Underhill. And we spoke to this bloke and we said, it's a bit of a hill, isn't it? He said, oh, it's better since they levelled it up. And we're like, are you kidding? They levelled it. You've got an advantage if you're going down the hill. It's really lovely to see two teams that are kind of sort of look out for, are both doing really well. They're in this position at the moment. Not quite sure where my allegiances would lie if they both got to the final. But it's a great story. Luke's done an amazing job. He definitely deserves to have a chance of managing in the Football League, and keeping everything crossed for him, because he's started at Borehamwood and he's done a fab job to get to where he has now.
It would be an amazing final, Ryan. Borehamwood versus Barnet.
It would, to be honest, my allegiance would probably lie with
Borehamwood. Yeah, I thought so, because you text me saying we are the wood after the result.
Yeah, me and Chris obviously were going a couple of years ago when they last reached the playoffs, and Borehamwood, my granddad's born and bred in Elstree, and I've always grown up having to look at the Borehamwood score with my granddad, so it's sort of always felt affection for them, and obviously I have done now as they've obviously got into these really great positions. I know I say it every week, but it's just amazing that these matches have been able to go on, and the Football League and the National League have found a way to unfortunately for the clubs that were relegated, but to still allow the clubs to go up, because it would have been really easy for them to say, let's just void everything and start again. So, for a club like Borehamwood and Barnet, obviously to have a great late push, it's really good. being honest, it'd be amazing to see a final of Barnet v Borehamwood, especially for us at Wembley. Still going to be a tough ask because Notts County are a very good side.
Absolutely,
They
yeah.
are Barnet. They've got lots of league experience, and Harrogate Town, they're a bit of a dark horse.
Yeah.
But to see either Borehamwood or Harrogate Town to have a chance of getting to the Football League will be incredible. That's why I love these type of games.
Yeah, like you said, mentioned Notts County, obviously they were the oldest club in English football, and had been in the Football League for so long. They're desperate to get back into the Football League again. They've got Neil Ardley now as their manager. Used to manage Wimbledon, who did a great job there. It's going to be difficult, as you say. It's going to be a tough ask, but it's fab. If we can see two clubs just out, around the London area playing at Wembley, for that chance to be in the Football League, it'd be lovely. It'd be a great image. Obviously no fans will be able to go to the game, but it'd be great just to see it on TV.
It really would be. Believe me when I say this, Neil Ardley wants it more than anyone. Lee, you played football with Darren Curry. Are you rooting for Barnet in this one? Are you going for Borehamwood? Any favourites?
Battle of the A1, won't it? Absolutely. I remember years ago, I've been over to Borehamwood lots of times, a lot of friends over there that go to see the Wood. Used to go and watch Watford reserves over there when I was playing Arsenal reserves back in the day. Over Borehamwood. They've come a long way. They've stabilised in that division now for a number of years, which is considering the attendances that they get and the finances that will affect. Done a fantastic job. Of course, Brian, Darren Curry used to manage a Stanmet Police Vets. Used to play with Junior Lewis. We used to have a bit of a giggle. So them two down at Barnet, again, have done a good job there. And Luke at Borehamwood. So battle of the A1, let's hope, and bring it on. And may the best team win.
May the best team win. Well, that's it. That's all we've got time for on today's Sports Vibe podcast. Chris, thank you very much for joining.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been really lovely. Hopefully I can come back again soon.
Of course you can. You're always welcome. Ryan, thank you for joining.
Yeah, up the Watfords, up the woods.
Up the wood, yeah. do you want to do the chant that you were singing when we were at the game?
Go on, Ryan. Sing us the chant.
Go on.
We are wood, we are wood, we are wood.
There you go.
Look at that. And Lee,
the Wood.
Go on, Lee. Give it a go.
We are the Wood.
Yeah.
We are the
Wood. Wood. We are the Wood.
Brilliant. We'll end it on that. Thank you very much for listening, and go listen back to all of our other podcasts. You can find us on Spotify and across all major platforms. Have a good week, and we'll Watford be in the Premier League next time we speak to you. Let's hope so. Come on, Watford.
Watford.